Bezrat Hashem, today's Amud is Daf Tet Zayin Amud Aleph. So we are holding by the very top. We'll just read over the last couple of lines that we read last time, and it segues into a story. So we finally brought a proof that Beit Shammai does like their own psak. What was the proof? So very top line, Tashema Bimei Rebbe Dosa ben Horkinas Hutrat Sarat Habad La'achin. In the time of Rabbi Dosa ben Horkinas, they were matir a tzarat habat, the co-wife of someone's daughter, a tzarat erva, to one of the brothers that was his daughter was married. So, what do you see from here? Shema mina asu, shema mina. You see from here that Beit Shammai did like their own psak. Okay, gufa. Now the Gemara quotes this and gets into a story. So they were matir the tzara to marry the brother. The Chachamim had a very hard time with this. Chacham gadol haya ve'anav kamu milavo lebeit midrash, because Rabbi Dosa ben Horkinas, they basically thought that he was the one. They thought Rabbi Dosa ben Horkinas is the one that gave the heter over here for the tzara to marry the brothers. So they were very distraught. The Chachamim were very distraught. It was very difficult in their eyes. Chacham gadol haya. He was a very big Chacham. Ve'enav kamu milavo lebeit midrash. And because his eyes, he stopped seeing. He was very old. He wasn't coming to the Beit HaMidrash. So, Amru, mi yelech veyodio. They said, listen, who's going to go and speak to him about this? Who's going to go and talk to Rabbi Dosa ben Horkinas about this, that he was matir, he allowed the tzarat erva to marry the brothers, it's going to cause mamzerut, we should go like Beit Hillel, not like Beit Shammai. So, Amru lahen, so Amar lahen, Rabbi Yoshua, ani elech. Rabbi Yoshua said, I'm going to go talk to him. V'acharav mi, Rabbi Elazar ben Azariah. Next was Rabbi Elazar ben Azariah. V'acharav mi, Rabbi Akiva. So you have these three, Rabbi Yoshua, Rabbi Elazar ben Azariah, and Rabbi Akiva. Halchu v'amdu al petach beto. So they went to the house of Rabbi Dosa ben Horkinas.
All of them was the same.
They were all around the same time. Yeah, right. It was not too long after the destruction of the second Beit HaMikdash. Nichnesa shifchato. So his shifcha opened the door. She came to the door. Amra lo, Rebbe, Chachmei Yisrael ba'in etzlecha. So she went to Rabbi Dosa. She said, Rebbe, the Chachamim are coming to see you. Amar la, yikansu. He said, okay, so let them in. V'nichnesu. They came in. Tavsu Rabbi Yoshua. Ve'oshivu al mita shel zahav. They took Rabbi Yoshua. They put him on, a nice golden chair, nice golden bed to sit on. Amarle, Rebbe, emor letalmidecha acher ve'yeshev. He said to Rabbi Dosa, he said, Rebbe, there's another student here. You should tell him, invite him to sit down also. Amarlo mihu. He said, who is this other student? Rabbi Elazar ben Azariah. It was Rabbi Elazar ben Azariah. So Amar, he said, Rabbi Dosa said, Amar v'yeshlo ben la'Azariah chaverenu. So my friend Azariah has a son? Wow. So Kara alav amikra azeh, he said this pasuk, Nar haiti, gam zakanti, v'lo raiti tzadik ne'ezav, v'zar'o mevakesh lachem. So simple understanding is, he said the pasuk, I was a nar haiti, I was young, gam zakanti, now I'm old, and I see even Rabbi Elazar ben Azariah, Azariah and his son Rabbi Elazar, they came from, the Gemara says Rabbi Elazar ben Azariah, was very, very wealthy. So he says, I didn't see, it was our own Vakesh Lachem, that Loreti Tzadik Ne'ezav, that Tzadik, Rabbi Azariah, the father, he wasn't, Hashem didn't leave him, Hashem gave him. Vezar Om Vakish Lachem, and his son also doesn't need to ask for bread. But I was just thinking here on this pasuk, Rabbi Lazar ben Azariah, there's another story about Rabbi Lazar ben Azariah, a famous story. That Rabbi Lazar ben Azariah, what do we say in the Haggadah? Am Rabbi Lazar ben Azariah, Hare ani keven shivim shana. Right? What happened? He was 18 years old when he was appointed to be the Nasi. So he said, it's not kavod for me. I don't have any white hairs, and I'm going to be appointed to be Nasi. So what happened? He woke up the next morning and he had a beard full of white hair. So he says, Hare ani keven shivim shana. So it could be he's saying like on it, like a little bit like divrei nevuah. He's saying I knew. It could be he knew that Azariah had a son, but I didn't know. He had a son that was this age, of this caliber, of this stature. Nar haiti gam zakanti. He was a nar, and now he's a zaken. Okay. Either way, says the Gemara further. Tafsu v'hoshivu al mita shel zahav. So he took Rabbi Lazar ben Azariah also, and they put him on the golden chair. So Amar le Rebbe emor letalmidecha acher v'yeshev. He said, Rabbi Yoshua again said, Rebbe, there's another student also. Tell him to come sit down. Umihu Akiva ben Yosef. This was Rabbi Akiva.
Ben Yosef?
Yeah.
How could Ben Yosef?
What do you mean? How could he be Ben Yosef?
It was a ger, yeah.
He was descendant. He himself wasn't a ger. He came from lineage of gerim. He himself wasn't a ger.
You mean his father was a ger?
His lineage, his father, grandfather.
No, they said the Gemara said he was hating all the Jews.
He wasn't a ger. He was a Amaretz, but his family came from gerim.
Oh, you mean his parents became a ger, then become a Jew?
Yeah. Okay, so Amar le. So you have these. Okay, so what's going on here? They went to Rabbi Dosa to ask him about this, psak that tzarat habat. They allowed tzarat habat. It's going to cause mamzerim. So Rabbi Yoshua, Rabbi Elazar ben Azariah, Rabbi Akiva went. They got invited in. He sat each of them down. So Amar le. So he said, Atahu Akiva ben Yosef sheshimcha holech misof haolam v'ad sofo. He said, you're Akiva ben Yosef, that your name goes from one end of the world to the other, that you're, So he said, Shev beni Shev. He said, sit down. Kamotcha yirbu Yisrael. There should be more like you in Israel. So he sat down, Rabbi Akiva also. So itchilu misavevim oto behalachot. So they started to, speak about halachot, kind of bring him around to talking about tzarat habat. They didn't want to go directly into it. They started talking about this halacha, that halacha. Exactly. Until they got to the main thing that they came for, to tell him about tzarat habat. So Amru le tzarat habat mao. So they said, another halacha question. What's the halacha about tzarat habat? So Amar lahen machloket bet Shammai u'beit Hillel. He said it's machloket bet Shammai u'beit Hillel.
You're asking who?
They asked Rabbi Dosa ben Horkinas.
You mean this Rabbanim asked Rabbi Dosa?
Yeah, Rabbi Dosa was much older. He was blind. They thought he was the one that gave the heter. So they were asking him, what's the halacha in this case? So he said it's machloket bet Shammai beit Hillel. So okay, halacha kedivrei mi. They asked him, who does the halacha follow? Amar lehen halacha kebeit Hillel. The halacha is like beit Hillel. So Amrule, they said to him, V'alo mishimcha amru halacha kebeit Shammai. Didn't we, we heard in your name that they said that, you said halacha is like Beit Shammai. You allowed it. They allowed a case. So Amar lahem dosa shematem or ben harkinas shematem. They asked him, you heard them say Rabbi Dosa said it, or you heard them say Ben Harkinas said it? So Amrule, Chaye Rebbe, Stam Shamanu. He said, we heard Stam, just Ben Harkinas. We didn't hear they say your name, but who's Ben Harkinas? You're Ben Harkinas. Yeah. So Amra Lahem, so he said, no. Ach Katan Yeshli. I have a younger brother. Bechor Satan. He's Rashi learns means he was a very, very, very sharp person. Who Veyonatan Shemo. His name is Yonatan. Vehu mitalmidei Shammai. He's one of the Talmidim of Shammai. Vehizaharu shelo yikapeach etchem behalachot. And be careful, he could outdo you in halachot. He could.
He's very sharp.
Yeah, he's very, very sharp. לפי שיש עמו 300 תשובות בצרת הבת. He has 300 responses to tzarat habat, the why it should be mutar. So you have to be careful if you get into argument with him.
Is more sharper than his other brother.
That's what it sounds like. It sounds like, listen, he said he has hundreds of arguments. It sounds like they had this argument in the past, and he says, listen, in terms of logic, he has all the logical arguments why it should be mutar. So why is it asur? Aval me'id ani alai shamayim va'aretz. He says shamayim and aretz are witnesses on me. Sha'al meducha zu yashav Chagai Hanavi. That right here Chagai Hanavi sat. V'amar shlosha devarim, and he said three things. Number one, tzarat habat asura. Chagai Hanavi said that it's asur. So it sounds like Rabbi Dosa saw Chagai Hanavi. Right? The is machloket actually whether he actually saw him or he had a Kabbalah, but they bring down, the Chida brings, other brings, that he actually saw Chagai Hanavi. He was that old. He was the.
His brother didn't see it. Jonathan didn't see it.
I guess not. He's younger, but he says I swear to you, Shamayim and Aretz are my witness that Chagai Hanavi was right here, and he taught me 3 halachot. He said Tzarat Habat Asura, she's Asura, and Ammon Moav Maasrin Maaser Ani Bishvit. Ammon and Moav, on the 7th year, Shemitah year, the lands of Ammon and Moav, the Jews that live in those lands, they have to give Maaser Ani. So this we're going to talk about also probably tomorrow. Umakablin gerim min ha-kardavin umin ha-tarmudim. And you can accept gerim from the Kardavin people and the Tarmudim people. So we're going to see what the chidush is. But those are the 3 things that he taught. The first thing is Nogea us right now, that he's saying Tzarat Habat is Asura. So he says, listen, my brother is very smart, he has a lot of logic, but I have this Kabbalah from Chagai Hanavi. So Tana, nichnesu bepetach echad. So when they went in, when Rabbi Yoshua, Rabbi Akiva, Rabbi Elazar ben Azariah went in to the house of Rabbi Dosa, they all went in the same door. Yatsu b'shlosha ptachim. But when they went out in 3 different doors. They went out 3 different ways. Why? So Tosfot says they didn't want to all be together, because if this Rabbi Yonatan finds them, he has the 3 biggest chachamim all together, and they might have to change the halacha. They didn't want that, so they dispersed so that they would each be alone. Others say that opposite, actually. They went separately because they wanted to try to find this Yochanan guy to argue with him. So, Rabbi Yonatan, to argue with him. So they went out into this. So Pagabo Rabbi Akiva. So he bumped into Rabbi Akiva. So this Yonatan ben Horkinos bumped into Rabbi Akiva. Akshile, he asked him, these questions. Ve'ukme, and he out argued Rabbi Akiva. He had all the, Rabbi Akiva didn't know how to handle the arguments. So Amar Lo, so Rabbi Yonatan ben Hurkines said, Atahu Akiva shimcha hulech misofa olam v'ad sofo. He says, you're the famous Rabbi Akiva that they all talk about, that your name, everybody knows your name. Ashrecha shezachita l'shem. He says, beautiful, Ashrecha, good for you that you were zochet to have a big name. V'adayin lo higata l'roe bakar, but you didn't even get to the status of a shepherd who watches cows. Meaning, great, you have a big name, but in terms of argument, you're not holding up over here. So Amar Lo, so Rabbi Akiva said back to him, Amar Lo Rabbi Akiva, v'afilu ro'ei tzon. I didn't even get to ro'ei tzon. I didn't even get to being a shepherd of sheep. I think this is indicative of, the whole concept, Beit Shammai, Beit Hillel. Beit Shammai was sharper, the Gemara says. They had more of the logic and reasoning, but Beit Hillel was more anavim, and that's why halacha is like Beit Hillel. You see that in this exchange also. Rabbi Akiva was being very much an anav, even though Rabbi Yonatan ben Hurkanas was sharper and stronger, but halacha follows the Anav. So we'll stop here. The rest of the Gemara is, the next Amud is short, so we'll leave it for next week, Bezrat Hashem.
That's it.
Yeah, quick short Amud.